Hello and welcome to Table Talk. This is our second edition of our weekly live stream where I answer your Airtable questions around a specific feature in Airtable. So today we're going to be talking about apps for the next hour, answering your questions. So just to introduce myself, if you're new here, my name is Aron. I'm going to be your host, and we have some new and familiar faces. So welcome Matt, Ethan, Alex, Margaret, Matthew, Kim, so many all-P familiar face from the Airtable community. Really appreciate you all joining us this Thursday at 1 p.m., every Thursday at 1 p.m. for Table Talk. So I have some colleagues here who will be manning the chat. So please ask your questions throughout. They're also going to drop some links of how to stay informed. We're going to have this every week. Every week, we're going to have a different functionality. So this week is apps. So really just drop some links in the chat to make sure that you guys can join every week. Kovon, Chris, welcome. Really excited to have you all here. So with that, let's dive in and jump to our agenda, the questions we're going to answer today. But again, we're always open to more questions throughout. So we have some that are submitted. Going to spend about 30 to 35 minutes on those and then supplement that with the questions you're asking in the chat. So with that, let's kick this off. Let me know in the chat if you're excited. I'm going to go ahead and share our base. There we go. And here is our agenda for today. So we're going to start off very easy with what is an app, talk a little bit about what an app is in the context of Airtable. Then we're going to jump right into a question we hear a lot is how do you use apps to create reports, to analyze information. Then our favorite page designer are going to talk about how you should use Page Designer. And then jump into my personal favorite app. So appreciate whoever asked that question, letting me show off some of Airtable's coolest apps. And then kind of more functionality and how you can use an Airtable app as a content producer. And finally, exploring some apps that we didn't build, but that folks built for the Airtable platform. So with that, Connor, appreciate that you enjoyed the set. Took a little bit of work to build, but I'm always excited to be presenting from Airtable set. So with that, let's jump in first and foremost with what is an app. So Airtable apps let you take the information in your Airtable base and analyze, enrich, and visualize the information. So what it does, it lets you create a layer on top of your Airtable information to create charts, import information more efficiently, enrich information. So let me jump in to an Airtable base, give you a quick overview of that base, and just explore an example of what an app and a dashboard can do on top of that information. So for the rest of the stream, we're going to be working in this kind of furniture company, right? And really, in this base, we manage the content around pieces of furniture that are going to launch, right? So we have our launches table where we have all of the pieces of furniture they're going to launch for this year, and then the campaigns around those pieces of furniture. So you notice that for every piece of furniture, we have a campaign, and then we decide which channels we're going to go ahead and target for that piece of furniture. And for every channel, you'll notice that there's a linked record, a piece of content that we need to track their status. So then content pipeline is a view of all of those pieces of content for each campaign that relate to each product. So let me know in the chat if there are any questions about the base. We're going to be exploring it throughout. And so as you can notice, there's a lot of information here, right? So there are different tables, different views. And what apps allow you to do, or the first use case I'm going to show you, is to give you an overview of information in different places in your base so that you visualize information. So as we're jumping into apps, what you need to know is that apps are organized in dashboards. So you can come in here on the top right to add your first app, click an app, and you'll notice that you have this space, this dashboard that's created. So let's imagine our first dashboard. Let's rename it. And we're going to call this metrics. So we're just going to explore the visualization side of Airtable apps as an example, and then we're going to dive into reporting, which is the second question. So to add an app, we're going to go click add here. And let's just spend a little bit of time exploring this marketplace of apps, right? So I mentioned enriching information, visualizing information, importing information. So let's explore some examples. So here we can see that we can create charts, and charts can auto update based on the information in your base. So you can instantly see your revenue versus your employee workload and things like that all in one place. Pivot table. You can also import information using a CSV import, create org charts, send emails. So really, it's not just about visualization. There's a lot that you can do. You can enrich information with Clearbit. So really, the options are yours. So let's start off very easy by adding a first app, which is a summary app. So I'm going to go ahead and search summary. There we go. And what summary does, it lets you summarize a piece of information from your Airtable base. So it lets you know the number of records in a view, maybe the revenue you've made per channel. Really efficient to have one big number that you can focus on that is always up to date based on the information in your Airtable base. So let's say we want to see the number of pieces of content that we've posted, right? Very easy. Let's go ahead and add an app. Let's go add that app. You'll notice that it adds it to our dashboard. And then up to us to configure the app so that that number, that 7, is what we want it to be. So as I mentioned, I want to go ahead, let me click out here, just give you what I want to see. I want to see the number of tweets that are posted. So first thing, that's in our content pipeline table. So I go into settings and let's tie this to content pipeline. Now I need to pick a view. Let's say I look at all posts and you'll notice that there's a big 21. This is counting the number of records in that view. So it's telling we've posted 21 times. But that's not precisely what I wanted. What I said was I wanted the number of tweets that have been posted. So in order to show that number of records in the summary app, I need to create a view that has the information that I want to track. So let's go ahead and create another grid view. And we're going to call this posted tweets. Now I mentioned 2 criteria for that. So we're going to go ahead and filter the records according to those criteria. The first was where channel, write that out, is Twitter. So now we're kind of narrowing it down to one channel. And then second, we said where status is posted. So that's the second piece, the second criteria. So and show me records where channel is Twitter and where status, always good to write it out, there we go, is posted. So now I have that view and I want to tie my summary app to that view. So let me go into settings. In here, I'll go to posted tweets instead. And you notice that it updates to 5, which is the number of records in our Airtable view that we want to track. Now, what's great about Airtable apps is that they update instantly based on the information in your base. So if I go to all posts, and let's say this tweet traverse coffee table, move it to posted, there you go. You'll notice that my summary app updates automatically. So Airtable apps update based on the information in your base. They allow you to do things like visualizations, enrich information, analyze and make decisions, all from a central place, which we call dashboards. So that was a simple overview of Airtable apps. But if you're interested in summary, we're about to explore many more over the rest of this table talk. So I feel like we can go ahead. What is an app? Should be clear, at least at a high level, how to use apps. I'm going to mark this as answered. Confetti, very important. Always got to get the confetti when you answer the questions. So let me know in the chat. I'd love to know what your favorite apps are. If you are an app user, or I'd love to know a little bit about what your use case is, what apps you'd like to explore, and I'll try to weave that in throughout. Gotta get that confetti, Ethan. Gotta get it. Okay, so our second question coming from Nima is, what are the best apps for reporting? So this is one of the most common use cases for Airtable apps is how do I analyze the information that I have in my base across different views, across different tables. So let's go ahead and explore some of my favorite apps. And again, if you have some that you'd like us to explore or that you use Airtable apps for reporting yourself, drop them in the chat. So question number 2. So let's say, when I look at metrics for this particular workflow, what I'm thinking about is, okay, how much money are we making per channel, right? So I've got this revenue table that looks at the number of revenue per week per channel. So maybe that's like a good chart. That feels like one I could do. Another one is team workload, right? So we have this this status view and I could see who's responsible for which piece of content, but I'd love to know who's overloaded, who I can assign work to, who's doing really well in producing content efficiently. And then finally, I'd love to know, how many pieces of content are we creating, not only per channel, but per campaign? So are we focusing too much on one channel per one campaign? Are we overloading one of our channels? So let's try to get one dashboard that has all of that information, really a kind of central metrics dashboard using Airtable apps. So the first is summary, extremely useful, right? So here, what I'm saying in summary is I have 6. Let's actually make this a little better for reporting. I can add a label that says 6 posted tweets. And Twitter is blue. Let's make that the light blue. Makes sense. Awesome. So I'm seeing some great recommendations in the chat. We've got Matthew, Deduper app, definitely one of our favorites. Scripting, one of my personal favorites, and I'm gonna jump into it in a little bit. Okay, so our first one is summary, telling us the number of posted tweets. Let's go next into, okay, how much revenue are we making per week, per channel? Now, when I think about that, that sounds like a chart. I'd love a line chart that has one line for each channel. So let's go ahead and into our apps marketplace. And let's look at chart. Boom, let's add the app. Now, one thing that I like to do is I like to see what did it guess. It looked at content pipeline. We're looking at revenue, right? So which view we want all of our metrics. I want a line chart. And now for the x-axis, what I'd love is the reporting week. So let's go into our base and just see what this looks like. Let me put it on the top just so I can see it like that. I have revenue. Let's actually put it as import date. That feels like a good x-axis. Import date, there we go. And next, what I want on the y-axis is the sum of the revenue. So I don't want to count. So it's telling us we have 4 records. That's not really what I want. I want to summarize on a field. And I want to summarize on the revenue. Okay, so this is telling us our total revenue per all channels. But that is close to what I want, right? And I want to start at 0. That kind of makes sense like that. I want to group by the channel. Okay, now this makes a lot of sense. So what I'm seeing is that the blog is kind of flat, Twitter definitely flat, but I'm seeing an influx in Facebook, right? So I'm able to compare how much revenue we're seeing across time, across channel in a very convenient way. And what's great about this is every time I update that information, these graphs are gonna update automatically based on the information in my base. So let's say Twitter had a blowout week. Boom, you'll notice that as I'm changing that, you'll notice that that line changes and updates automatically. So that's one example of how to use a chart, right? Natural, we're thinking of numbers, we're thinking of revenue, we think of chart. But one thing that might not be obvious is chart can also be used for workload. Maybe I want to see my content pipeline across each status my piece of content is in, right? Those like bar charts. I'd like to say I have 8 pieces in progress. I have 4 pieces that are completed. So let's go ahead and add a second chart. It's going to be a bar chart instead of a line chart. Is line chart? Would it be bar? Yeah, I think it's a line chart. Chart is not a type of, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Lost myself there for a moment. Let's go to chart. Add the app. Boom, we've got our bar chart. Yeah, it's a chart type, it's a bar, that makes sense. And it's already by channel. So it seems like we have 5 pieces. No, we're good. We're on the wrong table. Content pipeline. We want to look at all posts. And the x-axis, we want to be by status. There we go. Okay, so now we see that we have 12 posted, 2 ready to publish, 1 reviewing, 4 drafting. So a few things you can do here. Well, this is great. Well, which ones are ready to publish? Well, what's great is you can click in and see the information directly from the app. So you can say, hey, why is this one only ready to publish? What's stopping us from publishing? Come here, you can go to the activity and just say, hey, any update here? And even maybe tag Sohail. There you go. So you can go from your chart into the record that composes it without leaving the app. Okay, well, that's just one example. Let's continue here. Maybe I want to see which channel is in each one of these groupings. So right here, let's group by channel. Now it creates these little side-by-side stacks. I find it more intuitive to stack them. So now I can see that we're really good on Twitter, not so good on Facebook, maybe need to push blog and Instagram a little more. So that's one example. I do want to kind of come back. Oh, let me size this nicely. Woo. Let me go like that. This deserves a little bit more space. There we go. And let's create a similar chart, but that looks at employee workload. So instead of grouping by channel, let's group it by person responsible. So let me duplicate this. Actually, let's start from scratch. Let's do one more. That'll give you an example of reporting. So let me know in the chat. I know some folks have suggestions and what they use for reporting. So I'm just going to show one more chart as you're thinking about and dropping in the chat what you use for reporting. So let's go back to content pipeline, all posts. And instead, let's go same thing by status, but group by the writer. And then we could stack it again. So now I can see that Sohail is the two pieces that are ready for review are in Sohail's hands. Drafting are from Taylor. Now I can revert this if I want. I can also say, let's do the x-axis by writer and the y-axis by status, right? So Ash, really performing, has 9 posted, 2 drafting. Sohail has 2 ready to publish, 1 reviewing, 1 posted. And again, I can click into any of these and kind of get that records information. Absolutely. So there's some asks for base schema. Absolutely happy to show you base schema. Let's add that as a question at the end where we can explore base schema a little more. Cool. Okay, so we have our reporting. One last app I do want to talk about for reporting, which is Pivot Table. So far we've been looking at kind of charts, but Pivot Table lets us take 2 axes, one, and get summary information. So in our case, maybe we want to look at which channels we're targeting per campaign. So let's go ahead and add an app, add a pivot table. Here we go. Let's add that app. Okay, so first, we're still on our revenue table. Let's go into content pipeline. We want all posts. We want to group first by campaign. So this is telling us the number of content pieces per campaign. So if you're familiar with pivot tables, this is your first kind of axes. And then you can add another one to say, well, can we drill down into these 4 into other metrics? So in our case, we want to say the column, let's group it by channel. So now we see across each campaign how much we're targeting across each channel. Maybe you have a revenue and you want to get the average revenue per campaign per channel. Really, you can use the pivot table to summarize information, see information, and all of that. So those were just some examples, right? Let's make this a little larger like that, boom. So now you have one dashboard for all of your metrics that auto updates whenever any information in your base updates. And this is fantastic. This is the place you can come in for end of the week, make sure everything is looking good, or make decisions and update information directly from your dashboard. Boom, okay. So I think we can mark this one as answered. Boom. Whoop. All right. So we've got some folks, deduper app, base schema, drop some apps in the chat. We're adding questions to the agenda. Now, one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning is we do have a swag giveaway every week. So our colleague's gonna drop a link to the chat where you can fill out your information, and we're gonna pick one winner at the end of this stream. to get some Airtable swag. Maybe one day I'll give away the keyboard or a similar one, but that's not today. But the swag is really cool. You can get a t-shirt, socks. I know I love them. I wear them all the time. Cool. Okay. Page Designer. Okay, so we actually did a video on Page Designer that came out yesterday talking about how you can create a meeting slide decks that auto update whenever you update any information in your Airtable base. So you don't need to copy paste things into slide decks. You can have your slide decks in Airtable. And I'm gonna show you another example today, but what Page Designer does, for those who haven't watched the video, is it lets you take any information from a record and put it onto a page. So it's great for creating invoices, creating catalogs, creating slide decks, creating campaign reviews. Really, any information you have in an Airtable base, you can put it one record per slide and really create this interesting way of seeing information. Boom. So let's actually explore an example here. I'm gonna go into my apps. And what I'd love is to have a catalog of all of the pieces of furniture that we're launching, this year or this quarter. I'd love to have an image, all the information. This is perfect for, a sales team that wants to kind of distribute this catalog, or just for myself as a campaign manager, overviewing all of the products that we're managing. So I already created one. So one thing you need to know, I'm not a great page designer. So I'm gonna go ahead and have one that was already created, but it'll give you an example of what you can do. So I'm going into our asset creation dashboard. I'm gonna go ahead and open our product deck. Let me actually keep it here. And what you see is you see the same information you see in this record. So eCore chair, its status, its season, the materials, the color, the price, but in a much more convenient way of looking at that information. So I make this full screen. I see I have the title, I have that image displayed, I have the season right in this little grid here, an extremely convenient way of looking at that information. And again, this updates based on the information in my Airtable base. And I could page through the whole catalog. So this is Xu Table Lamp, which is the second product in our catalog. Boom, like that. And so Page Designer lets you take information from a table, and each record becomes one slide in that Page Designer or in that slide deck. And you could pull information from that record. So let's, instead of building the whole thing, do check out that 2-minute video. Let's actually just edit one just to get a sense of how it works. So I'm gonna go ahead and edit the layout. And what you see is you have all of your fields from your table here on the left that you can drag and drop. So let's imagine we're recreating this season like that. Let me remove it. Then here I could find seasons. All I do is I drag and drop it. You'll notice that it creates it, it aligns it nicely. I can control, I can give it borders, but let's just keep it that way. And then what I want is a little season label here to the left. So here I have all of my fields, and then here are static elements I can add. So let me add a little bit of text like that. Let me write season, and then let's align that nicely. Let's make it bold. Give it a little more weighting. There we go, that seems about right. And let's make it a tiny bit smaller. There you go. So now I've taken a static element of text, and then I've added that variable field from the Airtable base in the right. And so now as I page through, you'll notice that season is there everywhere. And it's super easy to adjust. So maybe I want to make the image a little larger, like that. And then as I do that, you'll notice that that change is reflected across each slide in Page Designer. So Page Designer, extremely useful for if you ever get the question, oh, can we put that in a slide deck? You can answer, it's in Airtable. Let's just use Page Designer, manage our meetings out of that, create assets directly from Airtable. So Page Designer, definitely one of my favorite apps, and I'm glad that I had the chance to show it off. So as I'm doing that, everyone is talking about this is my favorite shirt. So just FYI, favorite shirt. I have 4 of these. I wear this pretty much every day, huge fan. So Leanne's asked a great question. Only one record per page. That is correct. However, you can also input linked records, right? So if you have a linked record and you want to, for instance, input all of the campaigns that are related to that piece of furniture, you can pull it in. So I'm just going to do it. It's going to look terrible, right? You can create a grid of the campaign that's related to that piece of furniture. And you can also add columns from that linked record. So you can say, okay, what's the status, right? So this one is live and all that. So yes, from the table you're working out of it is one record per page. However, linked records become mini grids, so you can actually display more dynamic information from your Airtable base in Page Designer. So do recommend checking out that 2-minute video thinking about how do I use linked records with Page Designer to be able to, for instance, do a slide deck, invoices, and things like that. So last example, if you're creating an invoice, you can have maybe your line items as a linked record on Page Designer. Whew, Page Designer, always super exciting. Boom. So glad I got the chance to show it off. Awesome. Okay, we're about halfway through here. Let's check out what is next. What is my, okay, this is appreciate whoever, Sohail, appreciate you asking the question. What are my favorite apps? So 2 come to mind. The first, I think, is the most underrated app in Airtable, which is Web Clipper. Web Clipper lets you clip information from the web extremely efficiently into your Airtable base. So let me know if there are any Web Clipper fans in the chat. Personally, a huge fan. So Web Clipper is great. Maybe you're tracking information about competition. Maybe you curate a newsletter and kind of perusing the web and want to grab links from the web, put it into an Airtable base. Maybe just information that you find interesting that you want to read, books you want to read, recipes that you want to keep. So Web Clipper, definitely one of my favorites. So let's kind of quickly explore how it works. And then we're going to talk about Kuvon's favorite and probably, frankly, my favorite, which is scripting. Just a quick overview of what you can do with scripting. So first one, Web Clipper. Let's just quickly go into my importing dashboard. So yeah, we actually import the questions from YouTube chat into Airtable using Web Clipper. So really some good dogfooding there. So when you install a Web Clipper app, it's going to ask you to map what information you want to pull from the page you're on into your Airtable base. So before that, let me just walk you through our use case. So as a furniture company, we're always looking for competitors who are creating similar products to us. So when we see one on the web, we just want to be like, put it into our Airtable base so we can look at it every week. So here we want the product name, some images would be great. How much do they cost? What category are they in? And which of our products does it compete with? So we can have a side-by-side comparison of that product and our product. And then the link, so if we ever want to look at that product again. So here, when you configure the Web Clipper app, it's asking you which fields do you want to fill out from that table that you're going to input the information in using Web Clipper. So in our case, we're taking the product name from the title of the page. We're taking some images. We want the unit cost, which category, what type of furniture, who it competes with, and then the link to the page. So we're pretty much filling out the whole table using Web Clipper. So let's go ahead and close that. So in order to use Web Clipper, you need to add a Chrome extension. So we're going to drop that link in the chat. If you're not a Web Clipper user, go ahead and install that. You'll see it in the top of your Chrome browser. I have it cut off, but you'll still see what happens when I click on the extension. So let's say this table lamp right here, the Solkint, it competes with one of our table lamps. So I'm perusing on IKEA and I want to say, hey, I absolutely need to save this in our competition tracker, but I don't want to, copy paste all the information. I can click on the Chrome extension and then add competitor. That's the one we just configured a moment ago. And then it pulls in the title of the page automatically, right? So that's that first element we map to our table. And then let's take a product image. I can add image from page, take a screenshot, screenshot the whole page. Let's say you're gathering inspiration for a campaign from other designs or other web pages. You can take a screenshot of the whole page. I'm just gonna go ahead and click and say, I want this one. Let's add another one. That feels like gives folks looking at the base enough information. This one costs $11.99. Category, this is a lighting. And let's say it competes with our table lamp. So I'm filling out this information directly from Web Clipper, and it auto completes the link. I can add the record, and then I don't have to worry about it. I know it's in my Airtable base. I can keep perusing the web. I don't need to be distracted or kind of context switch between the page that I want to keep and the work that I'm doing. And just to show you that it worked properly, you can see right here, we have that record that we just created with the 2 images. So do encourage you to check out Web Clipper if you're ever curating information, need to pull information from the web, or if you run a live stream and want an easy way to add questions from the chat into your agenda, Web Clipper is there for you. So that was app number 1 of my favorite apps. App number 2 is our scripting app. Now, I don't have enough time to kind of talk about everything you can do with Airtable scripts, but essentially, anytime there's something you can't do in Airtable, script is ideal, whether you're connecting information via APIs to other tools. Maybe you want to run a query on top of your table. So if you're just getting started with Airtable scripts, I do have a series where we learn Airtable scripting. So we can drop that in the chat, which is a 4-part series that teaches you most of what you need to know to run Airtable scripts. And just as an example, we have a script marketplace. So if you're just kind of wondering what can you do with scripts, we have a find a replace, validate, email, delete duplicates. And I know that we have some submitted from the community. And I think those folks, so we have one submitted by Alex Kulvon, who's in the chat as well. So if you are a scripter and kind of want to open source your script, you can let the product team know, and we're gonna add it to the scripts marketplace. So do encourage you, if you are a power user of Airtable and you want to extend the functionality of Airtable, scripts are your friend, and definitely do check out Learn Airtable Scripting to learn more about how to write scripts. Awesome. Okie dokes. So there's a question, is it only available for Chrome? I do believe that Web Clipper is only available for Chrome. So Ethan, hopefully that answers your question. And with that, those were my 2 favorite apps, Web Clipper, scripting. If you're not using Web Clipper, install it. If you want to learn scripts, go ahead and do it. You won't regret. Boom. Okay, we got the confetti, we've got the horns. Amazing. Chime app, definitely if you run a stream or want to be celebrated in your Airtable base, do check out Chime app. Okay, so I'm a content producer. Are there any apps? So let me read the whole question. I'm a content producer managing a lot of storyboard, video files, and live links. Are there any apps that would be useful to me? Right, okay, so this is an example where that kind of idea of context switching. If you have all of your information in Airtable, is there an easy way to visualize that information directly in apps? So let's say you have a YouTube link and you want to kind of see it directly in your Airtable base. Or maybe you want to have videos in your Airtable base and play snippets of that video directly in your Airtable base so folks don't have to open and move to the right place. And also you can see information directly in your base pulled from the web in Airtable. So let me talk about those 3. So first is URL preview. So let me go back here. Let me create a video creation. So I won't be installing this. I just want to quickly give a brief overview. So first, URL preview. So you can preview the information that's in a URL directly in your Airtable base. So it supports Figma, Spotify, YouTube. So let's add that app and let's see how it works. So first you have to select a cell. Now luckily in Content Pipeline, it's going to video content. You'll notice that I have a URL right here. And when I click on it, you'll notice that it previews that URL in the URL preview. And if I would click here, it would start playing that YouTube video. So if you have maybe 10 or 15 videos you have to go through and leave notes, you can use the URL preview. And that means you can use it on Vimeo, Spotify, other applications, and preview that information in Airtable directly. So URL preview, extremely useful if you have hosted information in Airtable. So the second one I want to quickly talk about is the Embed app. So this is an example where maybe you're hosting a documentation around your product outside of Airtable. Maybe it's in some kind of wiki, Wikipedia, or just a general wiki that your company uses. You can host it in Airtable so you can see it at all times. So here we have a workflow example from Lucidchart. So if you want to see what the workflow is directly in Airtable, you can do that. You can also embed Airtable links. So let's say there's a view from another base that you want to keep open on the side of your Airtable base. You can do that using the Embed app. I almost said block. Embed app. If you remember blocks, you know, you're one of the originals. You can also have streaming video. So let's say you want to watch a stream while you're in your Airtable base. You can go ahead and add it to the Embed app using the, well, you can add it to the Embed app. So those are two examples. The last one I do want to quickly mention is video snippets. So if you have a video and you just want to show a snippet, you can have a start and end field. And then when someone hovers over the attachment, they'll only see that snippet. So this is great for sales teams who just want to have a part of the call that is shown. So maybe you have a sales call table and you want to say, hey, the really impactful moment is from 1 minute to 2 minutes. So watch that. Maybe you embed the stream and say, you know what? The only good part is when they talk about the Embed app about 35 minutes in to 37 minutes in, or maybe you're a web clipper fan. So you just need to find that snippet, and just really makes it more efficient when you're showing information in your Airtable base. Cool. Okie dokes. Boom. Confetti. The most important part. Why we come to Table Talk every week. Should I make the confetti more next week? So not only over the Chime, but over the whole base? Let me know, and I could make that happen for next week. Okay, great. So what apps have others built for Airtable? You're right, that mostly we've been looking at Airtable apps, so apps built by Airtable. But if you go into the marketplace, so let me go into asset creation, sure. Let's add an app. You'll notice that there are apps built by other companies. Miro, Typeform. There's even folks like Coolvone from the community who have submitted apps that you can use. So a bunch of examples of other folks building on top of Airtable and then open sourcing them or making them available in the App Store. Now, one thing to note is that if you are a developer or want to build your own app on top of Airtable, you can do that. You can build a custom app using our SDK that you can then either put into the marketplace or just use privately for your own workflows in Airtable. So do encourage you, if you are a developer or interested in building custom apps, to check out this build custom app functionality. You can even remix existing apps as a starting point just to get a sense of how the SDK works. So one app that I do want to kind of show off as an example is the Miro app. So this lets you create a kind of brainstorming Miro board within Airtable. So it's asking me to sign in. And I'm on a different browser, so I won't be able to sign in, but I'll just show you what it could look like. There we go. So just some examples of whiteboards you can build in Airtable. Or in Miro that are embedded in Airtable. And Miro is great if you're brainstorming. So if you're not quite sure what the structure of your workflow is or what content you want to create. So before putting it into Airtable, you can have a team brainstorm, exercise mapping, retros, all in Miro within Airtable. So just one example of many apps that are built on Airtable, but by other companies or by community members. Okie dokes. So just some examples of what others have built on Airtable. Are we ready? So I'm seeing demands for onset confetti. Whew, I could try. I could definitely try onset confetti. Okay, cool. What apps? Boom. Okie dokes. How do you contrast the Matrix app and the pivot table app? This is an amazing question, Kulvon. I love that. Yeah, so that's a great question. So the main distinction, how they compare is that they both have two axes, right? So the pivot table and the Matrix app let you create one axis and then a second one, and then have a grid where you can see information within them. So let's go back to our metrics here. And then you see this pivot table. Let me add a matrix. And then I want it on to the metrics, that app, there we go. And let's say I want to look at content pipeline. I want all posts, rows by channel by status. This is great. So the main distinction, let me just make this a little bigger, between the two is that pivot table summarizes information. So this is telling you on Twitter for Traverse Coffee Table, we have one post. Or maybe you want the average revenue per Twitter for this campaign across all posts. Well, that is perfect for pivot table. So pivot table summarizes information, whereas Matrix lets you change information. So this is actually telling us, well, this tweet has been posted. So I can look at all the Facebook posts, and let's say I want to update two things at once. I want to move this to ready to publish. I can update that information. So this is acting on top of your information in Airtable. So pivot, summarize, matrix, act, both across two variables or two fields that you can input. So they look similar, they feel similar, but two different outputs. Kulvon, let me know if that answers your question. Cool. Okay, so now we're on speed round. Boom, dokes. All right. So speed round means I have 1 minute to answer every question. So now's a good time to drop all the questions you have before we sign off for this week's table talk. Great. So first question is base schema looks awesome. Get the timer up and running. There we go. Can you show us what base schema? Yeah, so base schema is great for when you're building an application and you want to see the structure, or maybe you're new to a base. Let's go into base schema. Boom. And it'll show you the schema. Let's put it to metrics of the base that you're looking at. So it creates one little grouping for each table and then shows you connections. So I can see that launch date goes from launches into campaigns, and that means that there's a lookup field happening, right? And so very useful if you want to kind of get the structure of your base. So what are all the fields in the different tables, and how do each one of those fields connect together so you can get a sense of your base schema? Extremely useful if you're new to a base. Extremely useful if you're looking to optimize a base and you want to get a sense of its structure in totality. So base schema, definitely useful, especially for creators, base builders, and folks looking to optimize a base. Did I go over? I didn't check. Let's assume I answered that one in time. What should happen if I don't answer in time? We should have like a horn, right? That's like telling me that the minute is done. Confetti. Awesome. Okay, okie dokes. What is batch update good for? Great question. So let's say you want to update a lot of information at once. So let's go into campaigns, and let's say you have hundreds of campaigns and you want to update all of their statuses at once. That's really what batch update is for. Update multiple records at once. So you can create add collaborators to a bunch of fields. You could add, remove information, add multiple pieces of information. There was one example last week where I didn't even know this. You can use batch update to change the position of linked records. So do recommend using batch update when you're like, hey, I need to update a lot of information at once. Again, am I over? Man, that minute was really fast. Okay, well, batch update updates a bunch of information. I really need to reassess what a minute looks like. Okay. Cool. So last question here, and we have 4 or 5 minutes here that I'm happy to spend answering questions, so drop them in the chat. Okay, resetting the timer. So the question is, how do you make Chime block go off? Oh, it's a cool one. That's a great one. So essentially, Chime block lets you, oh, did the timer not go off? There we go. Okay, I got a minute here. So the Chime block lets you have the chime go off according to specific criteria. So for us, when a record is added to the answered view, we play the xylophone sound and we show confetti. You'll notice that the view here, answered, just filters on where there's that thumbs up. So what happens is when a question gets, oops, this is all our questions, today's questions, there we go. When you click that thumbs up, it fulfills the criteria and it plays the xylophone sound and shows the confetti. And this is great if you're having fun with teammates in your base, or you have a live stream. You can do all of that good stuff. So let's go ahead and click done and see it in action as we click this one right here. All right, okie dokes. Cool, so we've got the link to the swag. It seems like we're out of questions. So I'm gonna be talking about next week. We're gonna go ahead and draw who's this week's winner of the swag. So next week, we're gonna be talking about fields. So do join us next week, same time, and drop your questions that you want answered about fields. We're gonna be talking about computed fields, button field, one of my favorites, talking all about the different fields and all the surprising ways in which you can use them. So as that's going on, do we have a winner for this week's swag giveaway? This is where I don't need confetti, I need a drum roll to make this happen. All right, Matthew's this week's winner. Congratulations to Matthew for being our swag giveaway winner. I'm gonna reach out to you right after the stream to give you a link to get your swag. Huge thanks for all of you for joining. I hope to see you next week for Table Talk. Please drop your questions. I would love to answer them, and I hope you'll stay in touch. Make sure to subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I will see you all next week for our 3rd episode of Table Talk. Until then, have a great week. It was a pleasure hosting you for this hour of Table Talk. Bye, everyone.